Welcome to Dr. J's Prescription for Health. I am your host, Dr. Malia Jensen. I am happy that you guys are here. On Saturdays and Sundays, we do live streams. We share medical information purposes only. I am not your doctor. You are not my patient, so it's not medical advice, but we do get together and we try to answer as many questions as we can while we're online and doing things. So I want to just thank everybody for joining, and that tells me that you are investing in your own health when you come onto these podcasts and you start listening and asking questions. And I think that's really important. Yesterday, we had a wonderful conversation regarding cholesterol, heart attacks, the LDL hypothesis, the thrombogenic hypothesis to heart attacks. And we got a lot of feedback. I think a lot of people are still stuck on the concept of the lipid hypothesis, or the cholesterol hypothesis is another name for it. And I think over time we will have proved that wrong, because we can do everything to lower LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad guy, yet heart attacks are still occurring. And we couldn't get their LDL low enough in order to prevent a heart attack, because there's other things going on. Good morning, Angel. Good morning, Lucy. And good morning, 1910. Thank you for being here. 1910, were you the one that brought up yesterday? Hello from Oklahoma. Yay. You know, that is one state that I want to hit. I want to hit Oklahoma City before I die. And I want to go to the College Softball World Series. So that is where I would like to go. But 1910, was it you that brought up the P53 gene yesterday? I can't remember, because I did some reading on that, and I found it quite, I had heard some things about it, but I went into a little more deep dive trying to just look into that. So if that was you, I'm hoping that you remember what question you asked yesterday. So let me know. All right? Okay. I forget what it's called, but my husband and sons all have a thrombophilic gene. It could be factor V. It could be prothrombin mutation. Those are the two most common blood clot disorders. And you have to be very careful. For men, okay? For men, I will just bring this up because this is hormone replacement. If the men in your family have a thrombophilic gene or a clot-forming gene, they are at very high risk for blood clots, right? And so by giving them testosterone therapy or hormone replacement therapy, you actually increase their risk. Same with females. If females are on HRT and are taking things that increase their thickness of their blood, and they have prothrombin mutation or factor V, they are at high risk for blood clots. I'm not sure that there are doctors out there or these spas out there who are doing hormone replacement that they are checking prothrombin mutation or factor V. And it is, you guys, it's very important before you make any decisions, know that HRT can cause blood clots, okay? If you have a tendency to clot easier than others, then you are at very high risk, okay? Having visceral fat, so having fat wrapped around your organs, also increases your risk of blood clots. So visceral fat, I've mentioned in the past, releases a hormone, or secretes, I should say, a hormone called PAI1, plasminogen activator inhibitor 1. So plasminogen is needed to convert to plasmin, and plasmin helps to degrade blood clots. So if your visceral fat is pumping out a bunch of plasminogen activator inhibitor 1, so it's inhibiting plasminogen activator, you increase your risk of getting blood clots. Visceral fat, blood clots. Testosterone, blood clots. Factor V, blood clots. Prothrombin mutation, blood clots. Okay? We need to look into all of these things before we just go taking some medication. So 1910 says her husband had a DVT, so a deep vein thrombosis, and a pulmonary embolism. So likely the DVT traveled and went into the lung area. Hospitalized at age 30, 15 clots in each lung, left calf, all clotted. So your husband now has so they found out he's got this gene or multiple of the genes. Is he taking anything as a lifelong blood thinner? I'm curious. That is a really scary situation. And that your husband needs to pay specific attention to having visceral fat, okay? So it's very important that he keeps his insulin levels down so he is not building up ectopic fat. Ectopic means fat where it's not supposed to be. That is in and around organs, okay? So he's on Eliquis for the rest of his life, 1910. If he's got the blood clot disorder. Usually with a DVT or a PE, you treat it for a certain amount of time. After a certain amount of time, you can go off. But with your husband's case, that is a risky situation, okay? For the kids, they recommend dietary intervention. And he does tend to have belly fat. Thank you for explaining. You're very welcome. What is the dietary interventions, 1910? I'm curious. What did they recommend as a dietary intervention? Because, you got sons, and when they're growing up, their testosterone levels are very high. And that could put them at risk for a DVT. So let's just say 1910, you guys go on a family vacation, and you fly to Hawaii, and you sit down the whole time. Your legs are not doing anything. You don't have compression socks on. You risk, or they risk, higher risk of getting a DVT. So it's important that when you're traveling, tell them when they're traveling, that they continuously pump their calves, pump their feet, pump their calves to get blood flow going. So they might need to get out of the car or get up and stand and walk around in the plane in order to get blood flow, maybe every 1 to 2 hours. Wearing compression socks during travel is very important as well. So this is nothing to take lightly. Blood clots can cause a heart attack. They can cause a stroke. They can cause the PE, the pulmonary embolism that you talked about. So it's nothing that is, going to ruin their life. It's just something that you need to be aware of and just take caution. The hematologist did recommend that moving around, not smoking, etc. So anything 1910, let's talk about it, because this will add or will complement what we talked about yesterday. I believe that the main culprit of heart attacks is a blood clot. You could have clean arteries and have a blood clot that is in the heart or the brain, a stroke, or, brain attack, a stroke is, and a heart attack, which is a clot in the arteries of the heart. If the person is at risk of blood clots, in general, they have a blood clot disorder genetically, it's going to put them at risk. As they age, the more belly fat they have, it's going to increase their risk. Smoking, alcohol, sugar, insulin, heavy metals, nanoplastics, diesel fumes, everything that causes an injury to the lining of the arteries increases the risk of a clot formation. And in somebody like your kids and your husband, that clot formation is much, much easier than somebody who does not have those particular genetic diseases, okay? Genetic modifications, all right? So your father-in-law, so your husband's dad also died at age 45, but you didn't really know at the time exactly. So if that's in the 1930s or something, I mean, I don't know when your father-in-law was born, but when they had his DVT, he is actually the probably homozygous, and he passed on the gene to your husband, and then your husband actually passed the gene on to your kids. Now, your kids might be heterozygous, so they might not have full blown, but it's still a risk. Did you mention in here anywhere where what is their dietary modifications? I'm curious. They said dietary modifications. If I'm understanding that correctly, the dietary modifications, and from my perspective, would be to keep anything that causes an injury to the artery lining, the glycocalyx, and then the endothelial cells, keeping that low would be in their best interest. So your kids are people who probably should be on a low carbohydrate diet. They should be exercising, lifting weights, building up muscle, because muscle will be a sponge to excess sugar, which would keep the insulin levels low. Yeah, those would be the dietary considerations that I would think about, is keeping sugar low, which keeps insulin low, no smoking, no drinking alcohol, no diesel fumes, no working on engines, working around diesel engines. That would not be a good thing. Not working as a firefighter would not be a good thing, because any type of smoke can damage the arterial lining. So this is something that really needs to be looked into. It's nothing to take lightly. I've seen kids that are in sport where, since they do have this blood clot disorder, they are at risk of getting DVT during sports activities. Long distance running, anything that, can cause a DVT in the legs. So over exercising, an increased risk for getting a DVT in their legs and their calves. And then that can float somewhere and cause problems. Now, I don't think that they should stop doing sports. I'm just bringing this to your attention. It would be in their best interest to wear compression socks as much as they can. They might, look at nattokinase. Okay? Just look into that and see what your thoughts are on that particular. There are people who live with these blood clot disorders, never know it and never have a problem. But since you do know it, now you should be careful, okay? Let's see. Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Lucy, I forgot to thank you for being here. Lucy is one of our blue wrenches, or I should say a blue shield. She's a moderator and she can help out. 1910 says, yes, nattokinase. A patient recommended that to me. Yeah, nattokinase, usually it's, the units of nattokinase are in FU. So 2,000, they usually come in 2,000 FU. You would probably need between 4,000 and 8,000 FU in order to prevent, or hopefully prevent DVT from starting. John asks, in your model, I don't know what model that is glucose the primary driver of metabolic dysfunction, or a proxy variable reflecting upstream dysregulation such as mitochondrial inefficiency or hormonal signaling? John, that is a wonderful question, but can you simplify what your question is? To answer it simplistically, I don't think there is any one thing that is the cause of a metabolic dysfunction, which in this case, I'm going to assume that you're talking about insulin resistance or hyperinsulinemia. Metabolic dysfunction or metabolic syndrome is based on the diagnosis. And thank you, 1910, for that super sticker. I really appreciate it. Or the super chat. I'm not sure which is which, but with your question, John, I would say that metabolic syndrome is a cluster of things that are going on, or metabolic dysfunction. And those main 5 things, 3 out of 5 would be high blood pressure, high triglycerides, high blood sugar, low HDL, and a large waist. That, to me, is signs of metabolic dysfunction. Having 3 out of 5 of those would indicate a metabolic dysfunction. Now, did sugar cause it? Did insulin cause it? I mean, the number one cause of high blood pressure, elevated blood pressure, is, I believe, high insulin. Okay. High blood sugars, our diet is a problem. If our stress is high and our cortisol is high, then we are at high risk of that as well for high blood sugars, which raise insulin. But I think that we try to reduce metabolic dysfunction to one thing, and that would be high blood sugar and high insulin. And I cannot completely get on board with that, okay? I think there are numerous things that can cause problems. I mentioned, other things that we are susceptible to, whether it be polyunsaturated fatty acids, so PUFAs, omega-6, that can be a problem. Heavy metals, iron can be a problem. Anytime that we are increasing reactive oxygen species and we don't have enough antioxidants to take care to reduce the reactive oxygen species, we are in an inflammatory condition. All chronic diseases are inflammatory. Now, what causes the inflammation? I think it's multifactorial. So simplistically, to answer your question, no, I don't think that just sugar or just insulin is the primary driver of metabolic dysfunction, okay? It's definitely involved, but I can't reduce everything down to blood sugar, although I think high blood sugar is a humongous problem, okay? High insulin in general is a huge problem. We need insulin to survive. We need cortisol to survive. We just don't need as much as we're getting. A normal fasting insulin should be around 3 to 5. I'm seeing insulin levels in the 20s. That person with high insulin definitely has visceral fat. And that visceral fat, which is wrapped around the organs, especially the liver, but also the pancreas and the kidneys and the intestines, that is visceral fat. And it is secreting hormones. And those hormones are not good. Okay, PAI1 is not good. Visceral fat also releases a cytokine, interleukin beta 1, I believe, IL-B1, I believe it's that is a cytokine that's highly reactive and inflammatory. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and increases our risk of getting cognitive decline. There's just so much to know. And that's why I like to meet with you guys and just walk through all of the thinking. So, John, you're not wrong in your thinking. I just don't think that we should reduce it down to just one thing, okay? Well, did I miss something? Oh, okay. Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you're listening from New York, upstate New York. Thank you. Michelle asks, any idea what kind of meds or cream to heal bed sores on feet and tailbone? Not deep on the tailbone, but heel of the foot and a little deeper. What can I use to help heal it, paralyzed from waist down? Michelle, it would be using butt paste or butt cream. So BUTT cream can be very helpful. They use that a lot in the nursing homes. It's got a zinc oxide in it that's very protective. Frequent rolling of your body out of the positions, keeping your heels off of the bed surface. So elevating your calves can keep your heels off of the bed surface. Also propping, rolling and propping you to one side using pillows to prop you over to one side will remove some of the pressure. But butt paste is a good one. There's also one made by Remedy. I cannot remember the exact name, but it also has a zinc oxide. And then there's one that I'm really having a trouble remembering. I remember the color. It's kind of a pink, and it is probably the most amazing cream that they use in nursing homes. And right now I am having trouble remembering. It comes in a white tube that has some green writing, and it's actually a pink colored cream. I'll remember it, I hope, but maybe somebody who's in there can use some AI and say, hey, what is the bed sore cream that is pink, comes in a tube that they use in nursing homes to prevent bed sores? That would help me out. Joy asks, is grass-fed A2 milk good for women? How about this? Do people need milk? No. We are done growing after about the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? Milk has one goal, and that's to grow little people and little animals. So drinking milk after about the age of 5 to 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, is really doing us nothing except for growing us. And so since we're done growing taller, hey, Lucy, should we do something about Jason here? I think it might be time. But Joy, drinking milk after the age of 5 will only cause us to grow wider instead of taller, because we're done growing tall. Now, if we were going to choose A1 versus A2 milk, I would suggest going for the A2. The A1 and A2 refer to the casein or the type of casein that's in our system or in the milk, okay? So I guess we're just going to put this in a little bit of a timeout. There we go. Where was I here? The A1 versus A2 is referring to the casein. Most people react to the A1 casein versus the A2 casein. A2 casein is found in Jersey cows for the most part. I don't know what area of the United States you're in, but whether you're man or woman, I don't necessarily think it, one or the other, or drinking milk affects women different than men. I don't think so. I guess it would depend on if you're menopausal or not menopausal. I mean, women with lacking of estrogen will be increased risk of putting on more fat, especially in the belly, the butt, and the thighs. So it's not that it's not bad for women. I mean, it's a great protein source. A2 is going to be less reactive than A1. It's going to be up to you. Michelle says, thank you very much. You're very welcome. Yes, that is it, Richard. Yes, thank you so much. That pink cream is that, calmoseptine. I think that is it. Good job, research. Thank you. Sometimes I can remember, the things that we have circling around in our little disc. Yeah, okay. Jimmy must be, wait. Oh, 19 cent. Arnold Schwarzenegger said milk is for babies. I mean, Arnold could be right, right? He's right. It is for babies. Jimmy says, and furthermore, Susan, so you guys must be talking. Okay, so I'll let you guys do the talking. Yes, calmoseptine, Lucy, thank you. Light pink tint. Desitin is white, very thick. Yes, Boudreaux's butt cream. That's exactly who it's made by. Yeah, that French word, butt paste. Secura protective cream. That's it, by Remedy. Lucy, you guys are amazing. You guys are so amazing. Thank you. I appreciate all of your help. That makes my job a lot easier, and it helps to organize my thoughts. I know that they're up there in my brain, but sometimes I can't remember or can't organize it, and that's why I need you guys to help me out. But those are the creams for Michelle. So Michelle, hopefully one of those creams, but if it was me, I would do the calmoseptine. I thought that in nursing homes, it was amazing. And not many nurses know about it yet, or they do. It seems like it's the older nurses. And if the younger nurses were taught by the older nurses, then they're gonna know. But the standard of care usually in nursing homes is likely butt paste. Sandra says, can you talk about COPD? I would love to, but I would like to know what your question is first. We are live on Instagram and YouTube right now. So if you have a question, let's talk about it. We started out today talking a little bit about the reason for DVT or reason for blood clots. One of the listeners brought up that her family, husband and kids have a blood clot disorder, likely factor V or prothrombin mutation, or both. You can have both. And we discussed a little bit about the increased risk of DVT, PE, heart attacks, strokes, that sort of thing. I talked a little bit about insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. So that's where we've basically left off. I didn't really have a topic today to discuss with you, although I like to do that to start out the first 30, 45 minutes, because it gets you guys' brains starting to think and ask questions. But yesterday we spoke a lot about coronary artery disease and the causes of coronary artery disease. So what causes heart attacks? All right. And, belly fat, visceral fat is a huge increased risk of developing clots. I think that clots are the thrombogenic hypothesis of heart attacks is stronger than any fat, cholesterol, LDL hypothesis of heart attacks. That's my personal thought process after reading. And I used to be in the camp of LDL hypothesis of heart attacks. After lowering people's LDL cholesterol to 30, 40, 50, I did not see diminishment of heart attacks. In fact, these people were still having heart attacks despite having an LDL of 50 or less. That tells me that something else is involved in causing heart attacks and strokes. And if you do reading, and perhaps you read The Clot Thickens by Malcolm Kendrick, The Clot Thickens by Malcolm Kendrick, you might get a better handle on how clot formation is likely the main cause of heart attacks. Now, what leads up to the clot formation is where the injury comes in. And yesterday, if you're interested, listen to yesterday's first hour of this podcast, and you will maybe get a better understanding about the things that cause injury to our arteries. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Lucy asks, what are the reasons people wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep? There are many things. the timing of your last meal could cause you to be waking up. And let me just go through that scenario really quick, Lucy. If you eat too close to bedtime, or for some people, that too close to bedtime could look like 4 hours. If you consume something, the what you're consuming, if it's high carbohydrates, it's going to raise insulin. In a person who is insulin resistant already, that insulin that is spiked actually can stay in our system longer. So normally that insulin spikes and is out before 4 hours, okay? But in some people who are insulin resistant, the insulin is staying elevated much, much longer, okay? Insulin increases our body temperature, increases our heart rate, and those two things can wake us up. Increase body temperature and increase heart rate. So we get anxious. You might not feel anxiety by definition, but you are more wired than usual. So eating, and especially what you eat, which raises insulin, might be a problem, okay? You might get up to urinate in the middle of the night. Things that we consume, like oxalates, can increase urination in the middle of the night. Usually, Lucy, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it's body temperature and insulin, okay? If people have another thing, and I don't know much about the, like frequencies and things that can alter our circadian rhythm. And what I'm referring to is light. Any type of light. And it's actually the flicker. And we might not see the flicker. Our eyes and mind don't see it live, but the flickering is going on all the time. And so any type of LED light is going to flicker more. And so if you have any type of light on your TV or your phone or a night light, or this is one that people don't think about, is their Nest or something, their internet service. So they might have the Nest or the Wi-Fi disc or whatever, it has a light on it. And so it's important that you maybe have to cover that up at night. What about people who have alarm systems, or have the pads where you can play the music and do all of that thing throughout the whole house? Those pads actually have lights on them. Those lights, yes, can have a flicker rate to them, and that flicker is actually stimulating your brain and keeping you up. Pitch black, so, removing all the light from your room. So you should not be able to actually see your hand in front of your face. That's how pitch black it should be. If, Lucy, you're on a carnivore diet or a low carb or no carb diet, your body could be sensing that your blood sugar is low. And low to your body might be 65 or 70. So kicks in your glucagon, tells the liver to make some blood sugar, and that blood sugar will raise insulin, and then you wake up. So cortisol's a big thing. The middle of the night for me or for you might be totally different, but 3 a.m. could be described as the middle of the night for some people. But 3 a.m. is usually when cortisol is starting to be secreted to wake you up, okay? So you are probably sensing, the middle, I don't know if your middle of the night is 3 a.m., but that's when some people are getting up, okay? All right. Isaiah asks, have any information about the Harvard or MIT FDA approved of reverse aging human trial? I do not know. Isaiah, I'm sorry. I don't know anything about the Harvard, MIT. I might have heard something on the news and it didn't register in my brain, but no, I don't know anything about a reverse aging human trial. But Isaiah, is there such a thing as anti-aging or reverse aging? You know, I think in terms of biblically speaking, we have an appointed time to be born and an appointed time to go with Jesus. And when I start thinking about man altering our life and reversing our aging, biohacking us, I think that that is against God's natural order. And I'm a believer. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I don't want to mix my brain with things that are anti-God. Laying in a med bed is anti-God, okay? I believe that many of the diseases that we have today are our own doing. Man did it. Man-made food, man-made chemicals, man-made, okay? Everything man has done, worldly man, is altering the natural order of what God has designed. Again, I realize that we are fallen, we are sinners, and we are not going to align with God 100% because we are not perfect. Only Jesus was the only perfect man. And so I probably, even if I had heard about that, Isaiah, I probably would not have wasted my time looking into it, because the first thing I think of, and that's what I'm talking to you about, is it is reversing aging in humans. So to me, a study like that is actually giving the finger to God. So God must have messed up, and man to the rescue. Just my thoughts on it. That's my first impressions, okay? Goes says, hi, Iron, what part of Australia are you from? I'm not. I'm from the United States. Thank you. (1910) says, also, doctor, I would note that these younger men, I think, are taking more steroids due to social media influencers. Looks maxing. Very common, at least on the West Coast. 1910, I would agree that steroids in high school sports is very, very high, even in Iowa. And no, the kids are uneducated. They do not know if they have a propensity to make excess blood clots. And the only way that we are finding them is that they do get a DVT or a PE or a stroke or a heart attack. And then, you know what they'll do? They'll actually blame it on the steroid. Now, that is steroids are helping out, of course, but these kids didn't know to look to see if they had a blood clot disorder. All right. So they're taking a steroid, which could be testosterone or Deca or Primo or all of these steroids that these athletes are taking. They do increase hemoglobin and hematocrit. They're thickening. They're causing polycythemia. They're increasing the amount of red blood cells, okay? And, some of the bodybuilders, they're a little more astute, and they're actually going to the doctor and checking things. Or they are going to donate blood, and they get a free hemoglobin hematocrit check when they go donate blood, because you can't give blood unless they check your hemoglobin, right? So the hemoglobin has to be, or the hematocrit has to be in a certain range, or they won't take your blood. If it's too high, they won't take your blood either. So you would need to get an order from your physician to do a therapeutic phlebotomy. That means basically you just dump blood, is a therapeutic phlebotomy. But again, 1910, I would agree that these kids, they don't know, and they're playing Russian roulette. Now, the chances of them having factor V or prothrombin is pretty low, but look, you got 3 kids and a husband that had it, and that's a pretty high rate. 1910 said yesterday's was so helpful. Good. So you guys, if you haven't listened, yesterday was about the cause of heart attacks, and it might be interesting if you guys want to listen in. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're new here, this is an opportunity where you can ask questions, medical questions, and try to get answers. I'm not your doctor. You're not my patient. This is not medical advice. It's for information purposes only. Sabrina says, I was just diagnosed with mild venous insufficiency. I've been wearing compression socks. What dietary changes are needed? Things that will not worsen your venous structure. So you need to keep your blood pressure down. How do you keep your blood pressure down? Keeping your insulin down. How do you keep your insulin down? Keeping your carbohydrates down. So a low-carb diet. Wearing compression socks will help with the pressure so the blood does not pool in the lower extremities. And compression socks helps to push or massage that blood back out of the lower extremities. Exercising, walking, doing calf raises, things that exercise the muscles. The muscles, when they squeeze on the veins, it acts like natural compression socks to get that blood out of there. Venous insufficiency can be caused by iron overload. Now, it's something I don't know if I want to dive into today, but getting iron studies, Sabrina, is very important. You need not only a serum iron, but you need a ferritin, a transferrin, a TIBC, and a saturation. You need to check for iron overload. Veins are going bad because we have, states of iron overload. Veins are going bad because we have insulin resistance. Veins are going bad because we have overweight, obesity. Okay, those are some of the things. So this is not just all dietary changes, although if it was me, I would get my insulin down as low as possible, 3 to 5. I don't think what is sleep apnea. I'm not sure. You guys are probably talking to yourselves. Michelle says, I can go to bed at 10 a.m. and wake up at between 3 and 5 and not able to go back to sleep. I would see where what you were eating right when you went to sleep. If insulin is the culprit, it's staying in your body for longer periods of time. And then around 3, 4 a.m., that's when your cortisol is kicking in, okay? And so that can be normal. But I would work on the temperature in your room and get it down to, maybe 65, 63, somewhere in there. You got to keep your body temperature down. Thyroid is another thing. It just popped into my head. Checking thyroid, TSH, free T3, free T4, TG and TPO would be in your best interest. I don't know what your diet consists of, so you might want to check, electrolytes, vitamins and minerals. There could be deficiencies somewhere along the line where even iodine could be low, which plays a role in our ability to convert T4 to T3, or the fact that our thyroid can't even make T4 if we don't have enough iodine. Okay, so those are just some of the things. Oh, gotcha. Seasoned Troll says, I've heard that a main reason that people can't stay asleep for long periods of time is sleep apnea. That can definitely play a role in waking up, because if a person has sleep apnea, usually the most common cause is they have obstruction in their mouth. They could have a large tongue, That's called fatty tongue, and fatty tongue is usually the result of hyperinsulinemia, so bad diet, eating crapola, all right? So if they're eating crapola, they're eating high amounts of polyunsaturated, so processed foods, so polyunsaturated fatty acids and sugar. The sugar raises the insulin. Insulin causes ectopic fat to be laid down. That could be in your abdomen, like the visceral fat we talked about earlier with your liver or kidneys or pancreas or intestines. That's visceral fat. You can get fatty tongue. Fatty tongue is also very common. When we lay on our back, the tongue will slip back, block off our airway, and we snore, and we can choke off our oxygen supply, and we will wake up gasping for air. People can do that several times in a night, multiple times in a night. So sleep apnea is nothing to mess around with. That usually increases our blood pressure and causes obesity because we are tired during the day because we didn't sleep at night. So you grab crapola and feed it to yourself, which increases the blood sugar, which increases insulin, and it makes all of your problems worse, okay? I've seen people with very large muscular necks be a cause of sleep apnea. So this is also obstructive sleep apnea. Okay. Yeah, okay, good. Seasoned Troll says, I cannot sleep without the TV on. That can be a problem. You've accommodated to having some sort of a type of white noise. You could try to shift to some other type of white noise, like a fan, that will help keep you from, being wired, that you call it wired. The light is actually causing more damage to you. You're not getting into deep sleep at all. I mean, I understand it's a problem. I truly do. If you're wired, Seasoned Troll, maybe look into increasing GABA. GABA versus glutamate. Glutamate is stimulating. When we talk about our autonomic nervous system, sympathetic system is fight or flight. It's glutamate heavy, whereas the parasympathetic system is GABA heavy. GABA is calming, glutamate is stimulating. So we want to lower glutamate and increase GABA. You can look up GABA releasing exercises, so exercises that increase GABA in your brain. You could take GABA. GABA, capsules are available. That's also a consideration. If you're wired, we got to somehow lower that chronic sympathetic overdrive and increase your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, it's harder said than it's not all that easy, but it can be fixed with breathing exercises, increasing parasympathetic tone. Yeah, Michelle says it has to also be very dark for her to fall asleep. That's good. Lucy, you're very welcome. Thanks for being here. Tina asks, what do you know about Spargo? I don't know what that is. Is that correct spelling? Yes, the tile man. Iron sharpens iron. Proverbs 27:17, I believe. What about audio stimulation trying to sleep? That's a good question. You're going to have to try to fit in certain frequencies that are actually calming rather than stimulating. There's I think there's something called house music that is supposedly people listen to in order to help calm themselves. So I just pulled up some of this on YouTube, some house music at some point, and for me, music absolutely drives me crazy. It will wire me very, very quickly, no matter what type of music it is. Okay? So if you're one of those, music is not your best friend. You'll have to choose something else. It could be a calming voice, like the app Calm. It could be white noise from a fan, something like that, but still in a pitch black atmosphere. Okay. Sheree says, please stay on topic, doctor. Okay. Thanks for the advice. When you're talking to several people online, I'm sure that you, Sheree, could probably stay right on topic. But thanks for the advice. That was awesome. Dorothy says, man needs to go back to commuting on horses, growing their own food, and working in their community. That sounds like the Amish. It sounds like a wonderful idea, but it appears that supply and demand and big corporation has already ruined that project. Gluten says, let's see. Hold on here. There we go. Hello, Dr. Jensen. I came across the video by chance after watching your last live discussing the anti-cancer benefits of Astaxanthin by Samuel Shepard, who is a biochemist. Yes, gluten. Samuel Shepard, I believe, had a blood cancer. Samuel Shepard had a blood cancer. And because he's a biochemist, he couldn't put it down, and he went down a lot of rabbit holes. He looked into studies on a bunch of animals, including ones that maybe don't get cancer. And then he narrowed it down to what do they all have that basically did elimination studies over years, okay? So he started taking in astaxanthin through an algae that he found that at very high doses of astaxanthin, it actually helped or cure cancer. Now, there is a chance that, this is where that question in regards to the P53 came in. P53 is a natural gene in our cells that help to fend off cancer. They can stop, P53 gene can put a halt to advancing replication of cancer, and it can even protect our DNA, this P53 gene, and it can also increase apoptosis, death of cells. So if the cell is beyond repair, it needs to kind of just die off and go away. And P53 gene helps it to basically die off and just go away, apoptosis. Now, there are many things in our environment that can decrease or curb the P53 or block the P53 gene. One of those things, and I did mention it yesterday, is viruses. The COVID virus itself, the SARS-CoV virus, and its spike proteins will diminish the P53 gene and increase the risk of cancer. HPV, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus. So all of these viruses can affect the P53 gene. Astaxanthin actually increases the P53 gene, make it more, it wakes it up. And so if the P53 gene goes hallelujah, it can kill off cancer cells in seconds. Can the P53 gene, or can astaxanthin be bad for our cells? Possibly, if the dosing is, it can turn on some and turn off others. I don't know how to explain it to you, But Samuel Shepard used very, very high doses of astaxanthin, upwards to 100 milligrams a day, I believe, okay? He now has a product that is called Valaxa, okay? And it is in a super absorbable astaxanthin with maybe something else in it, I don't know, okay? It's a very, very interesting topic, and I don't think that pharma would want us studying increasing P53 gene and killing off cancers in our body, curing cancers, not just of himself, but he hasn't treated, but astaxanthin has cured many, many cancers in his circle of people, okay? Not his patients. He is not a doctor. He does not prescribe. He is a biochemist. He basically studies things, and he can study cancer, okay? Astaxanthin is the pink coloring that is in flamingos and lobster and salmon, those sort of things, okay? LG. Murray says, I'm curious what led you to your current diet and way of eating. I had been vegan, then developed GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, and then that led Murray down a ketogenic pathway and now low carb to keto diet. So I'm curious what led you to your current diet. Starting in about 1997, I was into bodybuilding. So for 10, 12 years, I was involved in bodybuilding. It was something I could do after college sports that kept me competitive, and I loved it. And what I learned by being a bodybuilder and getting up on stage, in order to get fat off of your body, it entails keeping your carbohydrates near zero. I was probably at 5 grams of carbs per day. So I learned that carbs were really not necessary. I could survive the rest of my life without carbohydrates. But what I didn't know is that I needed fat. Fat, if it's not on board, you're going to wither and pass away. You need essential fatty acids. And the fatty acids I was getting was actually from MCT oil. All of the fat was out of my diet, including the carbs. So I had no fat and no cholesterol. I would boil my chicken. I ate almost, at one time I was eating boiled tuna to get all of the fat out of it. I know that sounds like a chore, and it was, and I did it. My chicken was like beef jerky, because after I got done boiling it, I put it in the broiler and crisped it up. Back in those days, it was like jerky. It took me an hour to chew it. And that's how I got to that current state of a low carb diet. Then, like many bodybuilders, I would, maybe I fell off the wagon, so to speak. And falling off my wagon was not really that bad. But, probably since 2008 to maybe 10 years in there, I would still eat very high protein, because I knew protein was needed for muscular development. And I did not want to lose my muscle. So my protein intake was very high. I mean, upwards to 200 grams a day, okay? My fat was still pretty low, because I was in that state of no fat. And it's probably a good thing that my fat intake was low, because my carbohydrates were higher. I would eat a little bit of bun here and there. I would eat rice here and there. I would eat chips. I was eating chips here and there. And all of that led to me, over a 10 to 12 year period, of not really growing muscle, but growing fat. My body turned from a very muscular, lean body to kind of an out of proportion. Again, if somebody were to see me, they'd say, your eyes are skewed, you have body dysmorphism, and that could well be. But I had body fat where I didn't necessarily want that, okay? And that is when I started listening to influencers, doctors. I would listen to doctors who talked about a ketogenic diet. And I thought, you know what? I got to get rid of these carbohydrates. I got to get my fat back. And I can't just be taking in MCT oil as my fat source because it's a medium chain triglyceride. It's meant to be burned, not to be helping any other way. And pretty soon I'm probably going to be having episodes of cognitive decline and everything that we need fat for. All the hormone production, everything, vitamin D, the whole 9 yards, okay? So that is where I got to my current state. And I have been ketogenic on the verge of carnivore probably the last good 4 years, okay? That's not to say that I'm not going to go out to eat on my birthday, have a steak and a baked potato. I just decide that I'm going to poison myself for a night, okay? But that's where I am. I didn't have any real medical problems that would have forced me to do anything like that, like GERD. I just didn't like the way I looked in the mirror, and that was a good enough reason for me. Linda is listening from Iowa City. Thank you. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that. Yesterday, it was 92 here in the Des Moines area, and today it's 52 with blustering wind. So I love Iowa, and I love the roller coaster weather. I mean, why get used to something all at once? I mean, just why not ride the roller coaster of, in fact, it wasn't it last weekend we had below 0 wind chills, and then we had a day of 86 and a day of 92, and then now it's back down to 52. It's kind of crazy in Iowa. G. Krebs says, how do you tell if you have testicular cancer? Have it checked out. If you're doing self-examinations, you will find a nodule. For testicular cancers, now I have not seen maybe 5 in my 27 years of practice, and the testicle itself, not the skin. If you pull up the sac, the skin of the sac, and you have what you find is a gradual or a nodule on the skin, that is likely not cancer. Cancers that are testicular in nature feel like gravel. It'll be like sand on the testicle. So men need to be doing self-testicular exams, just like a woman does self-breast exams. If you pick up a testicular cancer early, it can be fixed, okay? So we don't want to miss stuff like that. But testicular cancer feels like little sand pebbles on the testicle itself, not on the skin, okay? And then you need to get it checked out. You need to go to a urologist, okay? You need to get an ultrasound. You need to have it checked out. If you think you have a testicular cancer, don't let it go. Michelle says, if you got your gallbladder out, why can't I eat spicy food anymore? And some other food I can't eat anymore. Because you don't have, and I'm guessing those foods that you're trying to eat are foods that have fat in them. And I don't know what you can't, I suppose you'd have to clarify, why can't you? Is it because you get side effects, or do you get diarrhea? What is it that you can't eat those foods anymore? But you have to realize that your liver is still making bile salts. You're still secreting bile. There's just nowhere to store it. Your gallbladder is gone. You've kind of wrecked your gallbladder by probably your diet, okay? Now, the liver still makes bile salts. Hopefully it does. I mean, we can still get cholestasis. We still have, if you have visceral fat on your liver, you choke out the liver and it can't do its duties. So there's a lot of things that can affect the liver and affect the production of bile salt. A lot of times I've seen where where the common bile duct can pooch out and it can store some of the bile salts just like a gallbladder would. So it's kind of like a pseudo gallbladder. But Michelle, there's probably some other things that we need to look into on you to see what's going on. Dawn asks, what are the best things for lymphedema? I have it in my left leg, and it can really make you feel depressed. I would, I think Dr. Ken Berry has interviewed a young lady who had lymphedema, and she went on a carnivore diet and cured herself. So maybe doing a carnivore diet or an elimination diet and see what happens to your lymphedema. A lot of that is related to insulin resistance. So I would also check an insulin level. And a normal insulin level should be between 3 and 5. Yeah, Richard says, I can't afford to see a doctor. I'm sorry to hear that. Or get your meds, so you can't afford medications either. Richard, you might want to look into state sponsored help for that. If you go on, I believe it's Title 19 or something like that, you might want to look into that, Richard. Okay. Yeah, Amy, that is another thing. If you're staying up too late, or you're 2 hours prior to going to bed, you're on your phone scrolling, just that phone light and the flicker is keeping you awake. It's stimulating your brain where it can't shut down. So getting off of your phone is very important, getting off the computer. Seasoned Troll says, wow, Doc, you know your stuff so well. I wish I did know it so well. I just have a lot of information going around in my brain. I call it my disc. And sometimes things that I've read are coming around on the disc, and it's just at the right times. But it's something I work on. I just read a lot. Seasoned Troll, I just read a lot. I don't know what else. And, that's another thing about the carnivore diet. Prior to doing that ketogenic diet, I was always losing track of my thoughts. I was still, I felt intelligent, but it was just like I was losing track of my thoughts. I just couldn't organize everything, okay? And I heard Tootie somewhere. Go lay down. So losing track of your thoughts could be just infuriating, frustrating. When I went on a ketogenic diet, I couldn't believe how much more clarity I had in my brain. I felt like God blessed me with intelligence overnight. That's how much I couldn't believe it. So that was another thing. And, to answer your question, once I gave up all the carbs, so to speak, and I was ketogenic, I actually was drinking soda still. I was drinking 1 bottle of diet soda every day. And I remember talking to one of my friends and saying, I'm still having some trouble getting rid of this belly fat. Again, it wasn't a huge amount. It was not the belly fat like a visceral fat. It was subcutaneous fat. And they said, don't you still drink soda? And I said, yeah, but it's diet. What would that do? She goes, oh, just try it and see. And she was talking about her husband giving it up and how it changed his life. So I said, okay, these are probably bad for us anyway. Probably, yes, they are. So I gave it up, and sure enough, I didn't change really anything else. There really wasn't much to change. So yeah, I don't drink soda anymore. Occasionally, I will, like, when I go out to eat, which is pretty rare, yeah, I might have a soda. But sometimes I look at that soda and it doesn't even taste good anymore because I see chemicals in cancer. Let's see. Yeah, Richard, I agree. It's just something to get used to. You got to just keep turning the TV off, and eventually your body will get used to not having it on. What you could do to start out, and maybe Richard tried this as well, is put a timer on it. So thank you. I appreciate that. Super chat for $10. I appreciate that, Murray. That means a lot. But yeah, maybe putting a timer on your TV so you don't go cold turkey all at once, is that you stay it on, but maybe you set it for 30 minutes and it automatically goes off. So you've already hit the sleep. So it's not still going and keeping you awake. I got a lot of people over. Kashua's here. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Good morning. All of my Instagrammers just like hang out and listen to me chit chat. Let's see. I don't see any questions. Oh, Melanie adds that someone she knows had swelling and pain as well as for testicular cancer. And honestly, Melanie, that pain is pretty rare. Most cancers don't hurt. And so, yeah, that was a good find. Either way, it was a good find. So hopefully they got it taken care of. Okay. Oh, and thank you, G. Coveney. Please, if you guys are new here and you like what you're hearing, you like the information that's being provided, please like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the hearts, do the clickety-clack for me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Lucy, for reminding me. If you guys want to sign up for a consultation, I go over your medications, your diagnoses, your lifestyle. We talk about these things and we develop a plan of action, and we develop a plan so that you can go back to your doctor to bring up topics that are important to you. So it gives you a way to not act like you're so dumb, like how doctors will make patients feel like they're just so ignorant and doctors know everything. Well, after you get done with me for a consultation, I pump up your brain knowledge, okay? And I give you the basics that you need to talk to your doctor. Now, not all doctors are going to be receptive to you having read the internet, not signed up for a consultation with Dr. Jensen, but because they won't like that at all. Never tell them that you spoke to another doctor. They will take great offense to that, especially if you said you talked to a functional medicine or a chiropractor doctor, and they will really lose their marbles on you. But nonetheless, hopefully you can have a better conversation and take part in your own health care and not let them be paternalistic and whatever they say goes. So having some information in your back pocket with your doctor coach, me, helps a lot. So you can email me at ironladydoc, IRONLADY, doc, D-O-C. So IRONLADYDOC at AOL.com. Okay. Go lay down. Serotonin Chaser says, I'm pre-diabetic. So a pre-diabetic has a A1C of 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9. That is considered pre-diabetic. So under 6, but over 5.6. Okay, so that's the definition of pre-diabetic. Obese, I'm guessing, is a BMI over 30. Sometimes anything over 29 or 28 at 210 pounds. Has PCOS. PCOS is basically insulin resistance in a female. So the ovaries, we talked about this yesterday, the ovaries are not converting the testosterone to estrogen. So the high insulin, which is from high carbohydrate or high blood sugars, raises insulin, and then the insulin blocks the aromatase enzyme that will convert testosterone to estrogen in a female. Now, if that aromatase enzyme is not working so well, testosterone will build up, and then you get your male pattern symptoms: hair growth, deepening voice, infertility, a fat upper body, so the trunk is very, very fat, legs are usually skinny, acne. Those are the PCOS symptoms. And you binge drink once a week and vape once a week, likely when you're binge drinking, I'm guessing. I can only speculate. So is there a question in there? I don't. Okay, thank you, Lucy. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I don't know, serotonin, was there a question in there for me? 1910 says, you came to the right place, serotonin. Stick around and you will find what you need. I want to break free is a new time listener. Thank you for being here. Gluten says, it's astonishing. Yes, an oxygen molecule attached to make the cancer try to feed off the astaxanthin. That part made me laugh. Well, gluten, there's astaxanthin is actually an antioxidant. It's an antioxidant. Antioxidants are givers of their electrons to neutralize a reactive oxygen species. So we have ROSs in our body, reactive oxygen species. We have problem childs in our body, problem cells. We damage our body, whether it be through smoking or alcohol or heavy metals or glyphosate or whatever the cause might be. Reactive oxygen species develop in our body. We need some in order to live. But because of our environment, because of our bad diet, go lay down. Go lay down. Go over there and lay down. Be a good girl. No talking. We, by our bad lifestyle, we make more reactive oxygen species than we have antioxidants in our body, okay? Our liver is the maker of the master antioxidant, and that's called glutathione. And glutathione can be produced, but it needs certain amino acids like glycine and glutamate and cysteine. And in order to make those, we need certain things like even selenium. So there's all kinds of, there's a domino effect, okay? Now, these reactive oxygen species, there's like 5 of them, and 4 or 5, they're the main reactive oxygen species. A hydroxyl is a reactive oxygen species. A peroxyl is one. Superoxide is another one. A singlet oxygen is another one. I said superoxide, peroxyl, hydroxyl, singlet oxygen. Oh, hydrogen peroxide. That's another one. These are reactive oxygen species, and we try to neutralize them in our body with antioxidants. In fact, nitric oxide also helps to neutralize reactive oxygen species. But you can see that the harder we live, the more reactive oxygen species that we have. And those are inflammatory. And every disease that we acquire is from an inflammation. And cancer is an inflammatory reaction as well. Cancer is basically proteins or DNA that has been twisted and turned. It's been made damaged, okay? And so astaxanthin, being an antioxidant, it loans out a electron to neutralize or reduce a reactive oxygen species, okay? Makes it neutralized, okay? When they have these negative charges, they're more reactive. So if we donate another electron to them, they become neutral or positive, okay? I think that's how that goes. This astaxanthin also works on the p53 gene by giving it a little boost. And then that p53 gene helps to fight off the cancer replication and helps, if that cancer cell is damaged so bad, it will increase apoptosis, death of the cell. Get it out of there. It's like maid service. Okay? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. The original case says, thank you for your Sunday live streams. I also do Saturdays. So Saturday live stream at 9 a.m. Central, Sunday live streams at 10 a.m. Central. PET scan this coming week to see if my lymphoma is all gone. Thanks for answering all the questions I had the past couple of months. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we're going to pray for good results on that PET scan. James says, thoughts on 24 milligrams of astaxanthin for skin and eye health. It might not be enough, James. I don't know. James, if I were you, I would look into the studies by Samuel Shepherd and just get an idea. You could even read that website. I haven't been on there, but Valaxa, Valaxa, Valaxa. That is the name of the product he came up with. And maybe there's more reading material on there. But yeah, I mean, there's people who will continuously get their astaxanthin from foods. They'll eat colored like peppers, so reds, yellows, purples. They'll eat salmon. They'll eat flamingo, whatever they do. Anything that has lobster that has high amounts of astaxanthin in it. Again, I'm on a ketogenic diet. I do not consume plants. I mean, green tea with ECGC, I think it's ECGC, that is a good for cancer and has natural amounts of astaxanthin in it. But you know, maybe taking a supplement is what we really need to do. I don't know, but I think the most important thing to do is we got to get rid of some of these reactive oxygen species. We have way too much negative stuff going on in our body and we can't keep up, okay? And I think a lot of it has to do with our diet. Go lay down, girl. You go lay down. I can't pick you up. You're way too heavy. You're too heavy to be here. Do you want, okay, you don't want to come. Go lay down then. I was going to try to pick her up. Michelle, I'm sorry to hear about that and your gallbladder and the abuse you took. I'm sorry to hear that. Murray says, thank you for giving us your time each week. It's a very generous gift. God bless you for your kindness. You're very welcome. God is good. God has blessed me. And God asked me to share this with you guys. And again, if I'm wrong, please let me know. I don't presume that I am right about everything. I read just like you guys read. We're on this journey together. And I want to do this together with you guys. And we're going to find this information and we're going to be better prepared to go to heaven. And in the meantime, we are going to share the gospel with others around us. Those for the Bible-believing Christians. The soda disclosure was funny. Yes, some of this is for entertainment purposes only, as well as for information purposes only. But yeah, see, I try not to lie to you guys about the little things. The soda was a big give up for me. I could give up carbohydrates easy. The soda was big time. I went through withdrawal. Withdrawal as in, I don't necessarily think it was addicting to me. I just enjoyed the taste. I like the taste. I probably still would like the taste, but when I look at it, I don't think that it even triggers my brain to want it. Yeah, Murray, it's Coke Zero or I like Diet Pepsi or Pepsi Max more than I like Coke Zero, but I mean, it's just, when you taste it, it's pure sugar. And maybe that's why I don't like it as much anymore. It just doesn't have it. But what I see is the chemicals in the cancer. I see dishealth, dysfunction. Joy asks, thank you, doctor. Please tell us what you eat in a day. I eat about a pound of red meat in a day and about 6 eggs and maybe a stick of butter. Lately, I've maybe a half a stick to 3/4 stick of butter. 3 days a week, I eat sardines, and every day I eat some form of liver. Not very much, maybe 2 ounces of liver every single day. That's basically all I eat. Eggs, meat, few sardines 3-4 days a week, and the liver. That's what I do. And I've been doing it for the last 3-4 years. Richard asks, will a low carb, no carb, high protein, and I think you missed in there, it should be moderate protein, high fat diet, help me with my congestive heart failure and type 2 diabetes? Absolutely. You can reverse both of those things. I have seen heart failure. I don't know which heart failure. I'm guessing systolic dysfunction. I've seen EFs, so ejection fraction, go up from 40% to 60% on a carnivore diet. So let us know, Richard, if that works for you and things have gone good. Thank you, Gluten, for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. That means a lot. You guys are very kind. I appreciate it. I know you sound like, what's $2 or what's $10? It all adds up over time, and it keeps this channel going, keeps me going, okay? So thank you. Yeah, NJ, that is true. I never thought about this. They say that the beach produces negative charges. So is the beach donating, donating one of their electrons or multiple electrons to all of the reactive oxygen species we have in our body? And that's why we are in better health when we're in a position where the toxins are being removed. The apoptosis is allowed to occur and all of those damaged cells is getting out of our body. We're in the sun, which produces nitric oxide, which also helps to neutralize reactive oxygen species. So it sounds like it's a win-win. I didn't know about the beach having electrons to give, but yeah, we're walking barefoot on the earth, just like you could do out in your backyard, and you're discharging these charges. It's pretty fascinating how God made our bodies. It really is. Oh, 1910 wants to see Tootsie. She went back to lay down, so that's a good thing. She's a whiner. I love her so much. She's so calm. She's the calmest little mini dachshund I've ever had. She's a snuggle bug. S. Brim, a friend of mine has high blood sugar. How can she lower it? Well, one, by lowering the amount of blood sugar that you consume. That would be the biggest way to lower your blood sugar. Michelle says, thank you very much for your help. You're very welcome. Cody says, how can I reduce blood pressure? Most high blood pressure is due to high insulin. High insulin is the result of high carbohydrates. So lowering your carbohydrates, which is your sugar, will lower your insulin, and then you will basically lose a bunch of pathologic water. When we lower that water out of our body we didn't need, our pressures come tumbling down. So blood pressure will come down. Now, Cody, I don't know what your hemoglobin hematocrit looks like. I don't know if you're on any steroids, but yeah, lowering your carbohydrates would be the first step. It's going to take time for your body now to become keto adapted. It could take a month or two. Could you lose strength in that time? You could. But usually when people, lifters, athletes become keto adapted over, a year's time, they will find that their athletic performance actually improves. Okay. You must supply yourself, Cody, with enough protein, especially if you're lifting, okay? You need at least your body weight in protein. And I think you need at least your body weight in fat that's saturated from animals. Just give it time. Do not be frustrated with the lack of strength, because you went from, you basically are in a fasted state. Now, Cody, a way to bridge that gap, when you go no carb, you could actually take exogenous ketones for a short period of time. By taking exogenous ketones, you bridge the gap, because it could take, if we're high carb, for your body to start, the insulin has to come down, and then you start breaking down your own fat or breaking down the fat that you're consuming. And that could take a week So sometimes 1 to 2 weeks. So sometimes, people who want to do this no carb or low carb diet, if they bridge the gap with exogenous ketones, they have less side effects and maintain their strength. So Cody, that might be something you want to consume is exogenous ketones in the form of beta hydroxybutyrate. Murray says, speaking of sardines, Ken Berry's wife Nisha smashed sardines, spread on parchment and cooked in air fryer. She then squeezed a little lemon on top. I'm definitely trying that. Good. I never, yeah. Good idea. I just eat them out of the can and be done with them. Yeah. Joy, thank you for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it. NJ says, my physics teacher showed us about the beach and gave us illustrations. Thank you, Doc. You're very welcome. And thank you. I should be thanking you for bringing that up. That's a great find. That added right to our conversation, didn't it? Mr. Juan, I think, if you're way too depressed for your good, you need to find some help. I think that's a good start, is knowing that you need help and then talking to your doctor, okay? Cody says, I'm not on any steroids. I'm also an extremely stress anxious person. So cortisol's high, right, Cody? Cortisol's high, sugar's high, insulin's high, bam, high blood pressure. You need to work on less sympathetic tone and more parasympathetic tone. You got to do calming exercises, Cody. Okay, give it a try. Do some breathing exercises. S. Brim says, I heard that red beets are good for blood pressure. Is that true? So beet concentrate has a way of increasing nitric oxide. Nitric oxide vasodilates. Nitric oxide is produced in our lining, in the endothelial cells of our arteries. If the endothelial cells are working superbly, then they will make and release nitric oxide, which vasodilates the artery when it needs to vasodilate. Nitric oxide is also made in bacteria in our mouth. So there's certain bacteria in our mouth that make nitric oxide, and nitric oxide, again, helps with blood pressure reduction. Okay. So yes, that is true, but I would just I would not eat beets, but if you want to eat beets, that's fine. It's like eating more calories when you don't need more calories. I would stand in the sun and get as much nitric oxide as you need. B2B, are you vegan? No, I am not. Did someone say sardines? Yes, they did say sardine. Thank you for the information. Noted, subscribe. Thank you, Cody. I appreciate that. What are good fats? Butter? Yes. Tallow? Yes. Lard? Yes. What else? MCT oils is a medium chain triglyceride. You need to get good omega-3s and omega-6. So those are essential fatty acids. It's just that modern diets give us way too much omega-6. We want a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. We're getting like a 20-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. So way too many omega-6s. And those omega-6s in the form of linoleic acid will oxidize. And we can go into that at another time, but yes, they oxidize. They can be easily damaged. Omega-6 in high doses can be damaged, okay? They're polyunsaturated, meaning they have many double bonds. And wherever there's a double bond, oxygen can attack that area and cause oxidation. A saturated fat, there's no oxidation on a saturated fat. However, if we eat grass-fed meat and pasture-raised eggs, we're getting almost a 1-to-1 ratio of 6 and 3, okay? So increasing omega-3s, it could be a good idea. There's where your sardines come in, or if you love salmon, stuff like that. But the monounsaturated fats, so animals don't just have saturated fat. That's what you should know. All things like animals will come with monounsaturated fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and saturated. It's a combo. So if somebody says don't eat meat because of the saturated fat, then you're not getting any monounsaturated fat, and you're not getting any polyunsaturated fat. So I don't understand the concept of don't eat meat so you don't eat saturated fat, but yet they'll tell you to eat coconut oil, or coconut oil is nearly 70% saturated fat, whereas a cow might be 40, 50%. So they'll tell you to eat coconut oil instead of saturated, or instead of animals, when coconut oil has more saturated fat than an animal. It's just beyond me. It makes me wonder if they have a condition called ignorosis, which is, osis means a condition of ignorance, and they just don't know. It's possible, right? All right. No questions over on Instagram. You guys are just over there just listening, and it's all of the YouTubers who are asking all of these questions. There is a caveat, Richard, and I did talk about this yesterday, that I want you to be aware of. If you are a person who is unable to tolerate as much saturated fatty acid as you would like, saturated fats, you could be an outlier who is at very high risk of coronary artery disease, a heart attack, or a stroke. Why? Because your liver cannot process all of the saturated fat. So how do you know if that is happening? One, you might experience fatigue. You're on a carnivore diet and your energy should be going up, but it's not. Or you're on a carnivore diet and you're getting belly fat. You're gaining fat instead of losing fat. Or you're not sleeping well. That's another one. So I would recommend that if people have high LDL and they're on a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet, which is low in carbs, it's higher in fat, you need to get an NMR, an advanced lipid test. An advanced lipid test will show particle size, and you really need to look at your small, dense LDLs. It's very important, okay? By the way, you guys over on Instagram, there is a live fundraiser for Rescue Rehab and Rehome. That's a rescue that I support in my local area, and that's where I got my tallow. My Norman tallow came from Rescue Rehab and Rehome. Well, really, he came from Norman, Oklahoma, but where I got him from was Rescue Rehab and Rehome. They take animals that are on the kill list in states like Texas or Oklahoma, Missouri. They take dogs or cats, animals off the kill list and bring them to Iowa, and then we hope to get adoptions here. Whereas they probably would have died because people aren't picking up as many rescues in those states, or there's just more rescues in those states. They're just running from what I've learned is there's dogs and cats and animals just roaming free because they just keep replicating. I don't know about the laws about getting your animals spayed and neutered, so I don't know, but there seems like be a lot of animals that come to Iowa from Oklahoma and Texas and some in Missouri. So Richard, to answer your question, or maybe I didn't answer your question, if you have a problem with saturated fat and you have high amounts of small, dense LDLs, just simply lowering the saturated fat and increasing monounsaturated fat. You can eat avocados, but lard is mainly monounsaturated, or it has more monounsaturated than anything else. So you could substitute lard in place of your ribeye steak fat or the butter or the tallow, okay? Ghee is also another good one, ghee. When you say sardines, do you mean canned sardines like the ones in mustard sauce, etc.? I do get canned sardines. I just get them in water. I don't get them in any other, no olive oil, absolutely no olive oil. And I don't do mustard sauce either. So just plain sardines in water. And yes, it's probably in some tin can. Richard also had a cabbage, a 4-vessel cabbage in 2020. So cabbage, CABG. CABG stands for coronary artery bypass grafts. So Richard is a survival of 4 vessels that were over 70%. So he experienced a cabbage, a coronary artery bypass graft. So they likely took a vein out of the legs and spliced it into the area that they cut out that was damaged, that was full of plaquing, that was blocked. So they splice out, an inch or 3 inches or whatever they do, and they insert a part of his vein that came out of his leg, and now that vein is called a graft. They grafted in a vein in place of that area. Now, unfortunately for Richard, his 4 vessel blockages are now at higher risk than they were before of getting more plaque. So it's imperative that Richard take care of those vein grafts because he's at higher risk of getting blockages at those areas now. With that being said, we should review the things that cause injury to vessels. That is sugar, insulin, smoking, alcohol, heavy metals, diesel fumes, nanoplastics. All of those things can injure the lining. Now, Richard doesn't have really a glycocalyx to he's basically got just a tube there, okay, that can be damaged. And it doesn't have the protection that a healthy artery would have. So it's going to be imperative that Richard, stays away from diabetes, stays away from insulin resistant, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink alcohol, basically maintains a healthier life, because the reason he got coronary artery bypass grafts was because of his lifestyle. So exercise is going to be important, sleeping, low stress situations, loving life, getting in the sun. Saunas might be a good thing for Richard, infrared saunas to help increase nitric oxide production, to help keep those arteries vasodilated and that vein graft. S. Brim says, my wife has a natural form of high cholesterol. I'm not sure what that means, natural form. She's on a medication. What can she do to help the issue? S. Brim, I'm going to just speculate what you mean by a natural form of high cholesterol. I'm going to assume you mean that your wife has familial hypercholesterolemia. Familial, family genetics, high cholesterol, blood, so high cholesterol in the blood. Now, there are studies you can go to PubMed, and high cholesterol is actually protective and allows people to live longer. You don't want to necessarily lower cholesterol. Getting an advanced lipid test, an NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, would be in her best interest. But if the hypercholesterolemia the familial hypercholesterolemia is a problem when that particular cholesterol is highly thrombogenic. So there are certain, I don't want to say pleomorphisms, there are certain genes of familial hypercholesterolemia that is more detrimental than others. Not all familial hypercholesterolemia is a killer, okay? And familial hypercholesterolemia should have been genetically tested. You can't just, as a doctor, say, oh, your cholesterol's 300, you got familial hypercholesterolemia. That is not how you make a diagnosis. You make the diagnosis by doing a genetic test. So, S. Brim, you should find out, did your wife actually do a genetic test to confirm familial hypercholesterolemia? Now, with that being said, let's just say they did do the test. She is positive for 1 gene, 2 gene, whatever, okay? Not all familial hypercholesterolemia is bad. In fact, it's actually good. Those people live longer than other people because of the high LDL. They have a longer lifespan. When it becomes a problem is her particular genetic finding is actually high for thrombosis. That is the cause of cardiovascular disease, a heart attack. Now, if she's on a medicine, I'm guessing it's a medicine like a statin. Statins do have a couple of benefits. 1, they're anti-inflammatory, and 2, they're antithrombotic. Now, is that the reason why you should take a statin? Maybe. Or could you do it another way? Maybe. Okay. You know, sorry, you guys, about the riffraff that's on here, but we took care of it. Okay. I guess you should find out like what gene that your wife actually did have. And if I had the one that did not have high risk for blood clots, I probably would not take a medicine. That's me. I'm not giving you medical advice at all. It's for information purposes only. Visceral, Vish, let's just say Vish. After years of night shifts, I started to eat too much. And all of a sudden I feel sleepy anytime. So yeah, you are in a state of high insulinemia, high blood insulin. And you need to get that insulin level down. Insulin will make us very sleepy. It'll drop blood sugar, and then you'll wake up, and then you will eat usually bad food, crapola, I call it. You'll eat more crapola, which will raise your blood sugar, which will raise your insulin. And then you are basically in a vicious cycle. And you will always be sleepy, have no energy, start getting fatty liver, getting obese. Those are the things, Vish, you got to make some changes. Richard says, Doctor, you are a godsend, Dr. Jensen. Thank you for taking the time. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I wish I could help everybody. Like I said, if you have any questions, you want to do a consultation, just email me at ironladydoc@aol.com. I'll go over your medications, your diagnoses, your labs. We can go over everything, your lifestyle, your diet, your exercise routine, your sleep routine. We can go over all of that. Sometimes it's eye-opening that, just one consultation could be life-changing for you. I've had patients tell me that. I've had other patients tell me that they probably never want to talk to me again because they didn't like what they heard. That's common when I say something, the truth hurts, and people don't like to always hear the truth, although they paid to not hear the truth, and that can be a problem. But, that's what being a doctor is about. We have to share even bad information, bad news, and it's not received very well. Somebody could tell me you really need to work on your delivery of the information. Okay, but the information is the information. You're just upset by the person who delivered the information. You don't like that, so you'll attack the character. That's called an ad hominem type of fallacy argument. So it wasn't the information that they were pissed about. It was the delivery that they're pissed about. And if that's you, don't even sign up for a consultation, because I'm probably going to say something that you don't like. You don't like the delivery, and you're just going to get more, worse. You'll probably get all stressed out. You'll release cortisol, raise your blood sugar, raise your insulin, then you'll go eat bonbons. So probably I'm not the person for you. You need somebody like Nutrition with Judy, who's very just soft and delicate, and just like a delicate flower. Somebody like her and her little workers might be the type of coach you need. Not all coaches, or not all people respond to my type of coaching. They need softer pats on the backs, and the treatment plan can go on for years. Whereas I'm kind of the cold turkey kind of a person, and I'll tell you what to expect. And yeah, you can either do that, or Richard says the truth may sometimes hurt, but it also heals. It does. It sure does. Yeah. Yes, it's hereditary on her mother's side. So still, Brim, we don't know. I don't know from what you've just told me. Hereditary, you could say, well, her mother had high cholesterol. She's got high cholesterol. Well, they both could have eaten crappy diets and they both got high cholesterol. Was there a genetic test done to diagnose familial hypercholesterolemia? Okay. Genetic test. All right. Melanie says, do you find bone fragments in your canned sardines? I do, and I want them. I just am careful. I do want that, because that is where I'm getting the collagen. I'm eating those bones. It's just like consuming bone marrow. You need that glycine. You need that calcium. I believe you need those bones. Okay. So, but you could get them without. They've been genetically modified to be sardines with their bones taken out. And, I'm sure that you can get more quality sardines than others. I might just eat the crappy kind with all the stuff in it, right? Is something like Plavix better than statin for someone with chronic inflammation disease like type 1 diabetics? Docs put them on statins automatically. They put all diabetics. It's not just type 1s. The guidelines state, so the guidelines, what the doctors are being told to do is put everybody on a statin. Every diabetic needs to be on a statin. Diabetes, here's the crazy thing. All diabetics need to be on a statin, but they never talk to the diabetics about getting rid of the diabetes. That's crazy because diabetes is the number one cause of heart attacks. So shouldn't you reverse the diabetes? Now I get it, Melanie, that the type 1 diabetic, you're not going to be reversing type 1 diabetes, but the dose is in the poison. If the more and more insulin that a person doses, the more and more inflammation. If that type 1 diabetic can lower the inflammation by lowering the amount of insulin that they're taking in, that means decrease the amount of carbs that they're consuming, they will have less inflammation. So do you necessarily need Plavix? You could take nattokinase. You don't have any medicines whatsoever, but decreasing the inflammation is the start. Get rid of the sugar. Stop smoking. Stop drinking alcohol. Exercise. Get out in the sun. Get away from breathing in heavy metals. Get rid of the glyphosate, which means plants, which means carbohydrates. So you're not going to eat any plants if you get rid of carbohydrates. But there's so many things instead of just taking a medication for high risk of getting blood clots. You got to get the insulin down. So that person who's got type 1 diabetes only needs, honestly, we only need in our body between 3 and 5. That's optimal. So if you got a friend in your life who's a type 1 diabetic and they're dosing 20, 40, 60, 80 units of insulin, my goodness, I would start working on their diet because that person's a setup for a heart attack no matter how much Plavix you have on board. Does that make sense, Melanie? Usually people with type 1 diabetes will eat and then they'll dose their insulin around what they eat. Well, they're just like a type 2 diabetic who's hyperinsulinemic. So you're making a type 1 diabetic a hyperinsulinemic person. They got way too much insulin on board. And insulin is the problem. Insulin and sugar are causing an injury to the lining of the arteries. And now you make a scab and then the scab clots over and that clot breaks off and it goes into the brain or the heart. So get rid of the injury, which is the insulin. Just dose what you need. Stop eating the foods that need more insulin. So hopefully that makes sense. Type 1s think that there's some oddball. They're not really an oddball. They're just they have to be their own pancreas. But what they eat will determine how much insulin and poison they're putting in their body. Insulin, yes, is a poison in high doses. It causes artery damage. It causes inflammation. Lisa, the website to the Astaxanthin compound, I don't know if it's a compound. It's Valaxa, V-A-L-A-X-A, V-A-L-A-X-A. Lisa says, what is your opinion of Wellbutrin? I would say, what is the cause of why you would need Wellbutrin? And then I might be able to ask, but Wellbutrin is a medication. It's a synthetic medicine that you're taking when there could be other things that need to be adjusted first. Truth Seeker says, go lay down. Can you guys hear Tootie? Tootie is saying, I need to be done with this, whatever you guys are doing here. So let's make this short. Tootie says, do you hear Tootie? She's got to go to the bathroom. Can you speak to iron overload in postmenopausal women? I have heard that a medical phlebotomy is required if you are high, if you don't like to donate blood. Truth seeker, I would first want to know about all of your labs. I would have to evaluate your labs to see what your true diagnosis is. So maybe consider a consultation, okay? Yeah, Richard, that's very typical. When I did see a doctor, all they said to me was, you have this condition, here's your medicine. That's what doctors are for. Joyce says, thank you, doc. My allergy test from my doc says I'm allergic to egg white. Most people are. Most people cannot tolerate the whites of the eggs due to couple of compounds, avalin or something like that. It's in the whites of the eggs. Most people are. So just eat the yolks. Those are where all the nutrients are anyway. The nutrients, the fat, everything is in the egg yolk. That's how the little baby chickie is able to survive outside of mama bird, and can live with just a shell and its yolk. And it grows and it pops out of the shell and it's now a big baby bird. Okay? So yeah, no big deal. You don't need you don't need the whites, and you don't need shrimp and milk. You can love them all you want, Joy, but there's no getting around it, okay? Sometimes I've seen people where they've avoided the particular foods for extended periods of times and gotten their inflammation down. They can add one back little by little and then can be able to consume those products. But usually you got some sort of an inflammatory autoimmune thing going on, and you really need to change your diet. I'm guessing that Joy is eating some other foods besides egg whites, shrimp, and milk. There's some other things that she is consuming that is increasing inflammation in the body. And what you're seeing is allergies. Okay? All right. Okay, you guys, I am going to let my little Tootie girl out to use the commode outside. And I will be back next weekend, Lord willing, next Saturday at 9 a.m. Central, Sunday at 10 a.m. Central. Catch my reels during the week. There's going to be a juicy one that comes out tomorrow. Last week, I had a reel that went viral on why you should take a statin. And boy, oh boy, did I hear that comments. I was being called a grifter and everything else. Yeah, that was something. Why? I'm just giving the information, you guys. What are the benefits of statins? That was simple as that. I mean, it wasn't nothing. But tomorrow, I'm going to really be a grifter, because I'm going to talk about why you should not take a statin. Okay? So I'm going in the opposite. I'm doing a 180 tomorrow. So check that one out. And if you like it, hit the share and the heart and the repost and do all that thing. Let's make another one of these reels go viral. People love to hear about cholesterol for some reason. We are so indoctrinated with our thinking that LDL is the cause of coronary artery disease. I do not believe that, okay? I think small, dense LDLs are in the mix, but they did not cause the injury to the lining of the artery that messed up this whole thing to cause a blood clot, okay? It's a blood clot. It's the thrombogenic hypothesis of coronary artery disease. You know what? It's a both. More so on the thrombogenic side, but small, dense LDLs do play a part. But we got to stop the injury. If there's no injury, there's no blood clot forming. There's no scab. If I don't scratch my hand, a clot's not going to form. A scab is not going to form. Okay? Same thing goes with the inner lining of your arteries. But yeah, catch that one tomorrow. It'll be on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble. I even put it on LinkedIn. I'll put it on LinkedIn. Where else? That's about it. I should start putting it on Twitter, but I haven't even really been on there very much lately, or X or whatever it's called. And Lee, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for the information. You're very welcome. So, Lord willing, I will be back next Saturday for a live stream. Bring your questions. If you have a special topic that you want me to cover in the first 30 minutes or so, let me know. I might not know anything about it, and I'll probably decline your offer to talk about it, because I like to at least be well-versed on the topic so I don't share misinformation. Okay? All right, you guys. So you'll have a great day. Great day. All right. See you guys.